Minutes click past relentlessly. The beams of powerful searchlights light up the missile. Truly the star of one of the greatest suspense dramas of our time. The drama approaches the final act. The Army's first attempt to fire a man-made moon into orbit. Time, late evening, Friday, January 31st, 1958, in a blockhouse at Canaveral. The countdown to Explorer 1.
Okay, we'll start now.
Any fuel loading?
Given the debacle of Vanguard, Washington was intensely involved in how this new launch attempt would be portrayed. Medeiros believed the White House was intentionally de-emphasizing the Army's role in its dictation of every aspect of the publicity plan. The general was to be at the Cape to oversee the launch. Pickering, Van Allen, and von Braun were assigned to the Pentagon. If the satellite reached orbit, the three men in Washington would announce the news at the National Academy of Sciences, in keeping with Eisenhower's desire to portray America's satellite as civilian in nature as possible.
Roger, Joe. 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Fire command. Fire command.
So we got a report from the Cape that the launch looks pretty good, and it should fly over California at such and such a time. And so the decision was made that we would make no public announcements about the rocket until it had actually been picked up in California. And so we sat there for an hour and a half. The time came and went, and there was a period of 8 minutes there, which were the longest 8 minutes I've ever spent in my life.
What happened was that the jet stream had boosted it into a higher orbit than had been predicted, and so it took a little longer to begin to get the signal, and so everyone is extremely tense during this time, because now the Vanguard program has had its failures. JPL and Huntsville are now carrying the flag, so to speak, and it's not clear for sure if this is going to work or not.
More agonizing minutes went by, but finally JPL received the signal that the satellite was in orbit. The United States had a success, but not an official name for the satellite. The card-playing JPLers had unofficially called the project Deal. Highball was Medeiros' choice. The Pentagon rejected the gambling and liquor illusions in favor of a more lofty concept: Explorer. Eisenhower, on a golfing trip at the time, was awakened from his sleep and told the news. "Let's not make too big of a hullabaloo over this," he cautioned, and went back to sleep. No one took the president's advice.
We were told that there was going to be a press conference over at the National Academy of Sciences on the other side of the river. So off we went, and I remember sitting in that car with the three of us in the back seat. It was sort of a cold, rainy January night in Washington, and I remember a conversation going along, I wonder whether anybody's going to be out here, because it's now about 2 o'clock in the morning, you see.
In Washington, at the National Academy of Science, a packed auditorium of reporters, radio...
Von Braun, Van Allen, and Pickering are there to lift the satellite aloft. It is interesting that the Army isn't there in that picture. And that's an indicator, in a sense, of what's to come.
The question is, has any form of life been placed in the satellite? I think I could answer that one almost myself. Not intentionally.
Maybe we have a Florida cockroach inside. We don't know.
The Explorer launch brings us back to a measure of parity with the Soviets. It's not complete, but at least we have now demonstrated that we can put something into orbit as well. The success of Explorer and what we learned from it really does kind of recreate in the most fundamental way the nature of the Jet Propulsion Lab, and moving it from a rocket development center to one in which space science becomes what it really does. It really put JPL on the map scientifically.
The day following the launch of Explorer, newspaper headlines across the country gave testimony to a relieved and grateful nation. Back in Pasadena, there was a modest celebration in the laboratory's cafeteria. Later, Vice President Nixon would pay a visit to the lab for a photo op with the satellite. In a way, Explorer 1 was beginner's luck for JPL. Explorer 2 fell short of reaching orbit when the JPL-supplied fourth stage failed to ignite. Explorers 3 and 4 were successful, but as if to give warning to how difficult exploring the new frontier of space would be, the fifth and final Explorer also failed to reach orbit. But the 3 successful explorers would give the world the first space science discovery: the presence of highly charged particles that surround the Earth.
I mean, it tells us so much about the Earth and why the Earth is the way it is, the fact that there's life here for that matter. Because of these belts, we are able to survive. It has dominated the way in which we pursued our science since that time. There is, I think, no way to underestimate the value and significance of that discovery.
These belts were named after their discoverer, James Van Allen. In contrast, Vanguard never recovered from its setback on the national stage. But on its third attempt, Vanguard placed America's second satellite into orbit. Unlike Sputnik or Explorer 1, Vanguard still circles the Earth to this day. It is the oldest human-made object in space. It would take years for the nation to appreciate Eisenhower's calm leadership in the opening of the space age. Though he suffered politically for the United States being second, Sputnik established what Eisenhower wanted most: the right to orbit above any territory on the globe. The reconnaissance satellites that would later fly helped to contain Cold War tensions. Another Eisenhower legacy was to establish, just months after the launch of Explorer, a civilian space agency, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, or NASA. The Army lost to this new agency von Braun's team and JPL. Wounded but still proud, the Army held a glittering affair in Washington on the first anniversary of the launch of Explorer 1. There were speeches, standing ovations, and toasts, but beneath the surface there was unhappiness. The loss of JPL and von Braun's team was a bitter blow for Medeiros' ambitions for the Army. He retired and became an Episcopalian priest. Von Braun was equally distraught. He had first declared that he wanted nothing to do with the new space agency. He changed his mind when he recognized the opportunity to build the rocket that would take astronauts to the moon. Pickering's reaction was different. For the first time, JPL was in the national spotlight, and Pickering got what he wanted most: the chance to explore the solar system. It was the dream that had inspired JPL from its very beginnings,